When using the pinless scanner found on Delmhorst moisture meters, sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what the reading means. My name is Paul Lorenzi, and I'm here today to talk about how to interpret scan readings. First, let's review how pinless meters work. The sensor located on the back of the meter sends a signal into the material being tested. When the signal bounces back, the meter displays this as moisture. The signal reaches a depth of about 3/4 of an inch, but the meter reading is influenced by the moisture closest to the surface. This is due to the fact that the signal weakens as it moves further into the material. Our pinless moisture meters work on wood, drywall, concrete, and even tile. Detecting moisture using a pinless meter is quick, convenient, and completely non-invasive. However, there is a trade-off. The readings you get with a pinless meter do not provide numbers in terms of a percent moisture content. Instead, they provide a relative measure of moisture only. Delmhorst pinless meters measure over a range of 0 to 300 on the relative scale. We chose 0 to 300 rather than 0 to 100 because we didn't want the user to interpret the reading as a percentage. Other moisture meters on the market use a 0 to 100 or even a 0 to 1,000 scale, but really the range makes very little difference when interpreting the reading. The question is, how do I make sense of these relative readings? The answer is to establish a baseline reading, often referred to as a dry standard. By taking a pinless reading in an area known to be dry, we can then compare that number to other readings taken in various areas of the building. If you find that readings in other areas are much higher than the dry standard, that's an indication of elevated moisture levels. It's also an indication that you should use a pin meter in those wet areas to obtain quantitative moisture readings. If readings are relatively close to the baseline or dry standard, that tells you that those areas are close to completion. I often use my own office as an example of how important it is to compare readings against the baseline. If I hold a scan meter on the wallpaper in my office, I obtain a reading of about 55 on the 0 to 300 scale. If I move to an area of the building with painted drywall, I get a reading of about 34 on the same scale. This is a good illustration of how even the dry standard in the same building can be different, depending on the surface you are testing. In this case, the difference between wallpaper and paint makes a difference. We are often asked, but how can I convert this relative reading to a percentage? A pinless reading cannot be converted to a percentage, and that's why it's so important to use a pin-type meter in conjunction with your pinless meter. This way you can cover a lot of ground using the pinless meter, zeroing in on wet spots, then go back with a pin-type meter to obtain a percent moisture content reading. Bear in mind that other than the different scales found on pinless meters, this same principle applies to all meter manufacturers. I hope I've provided you with some useful tips that show you that a pinless moisture meter is an extremely useful tool, as long as you understand the information it's providing. Just remember the right time to use it and the right time to use a pin-type meter, and your drying and inspection jobs will go smoothly every time.